Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. Welcome, everybody. We are in the house with Tom and the studio dog, Willie Bear. Tom, how are you doing this morning, man?
I am doing very well. How are you?
I am doing great, man. Pronounce your last name for me.
Burchhardt.
Burchhardt. Okay,
Yep.
That's what I thought, but I was going to probably butcher it, so I figured we'd just go right to the source.
There's a 75% chance that people get it wrong, so I'm really okay with it.
My name's Corbett Storick. It's never been pronounced correctly. Those spam guys call me, and they most of the time have like a Indian accent, and they'll be like, "Is Corey Storak there?" And I'll be like, "No, he's not there. Sorry,
Not today.
Yeah,
Not today.
Can't help you at all." So this is kind of cool because we, even from day one of talking about doing a podcast, we were like, well, we can't talk about what you do for a living. You have no insight on what I do for a living. And yet we were both like itching to do a podcast together about completely unrelated from construction and homeownership. And the fact that we both shared such a high level of passion was like, screw it, let's do it. It's my podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Absolutely.
And to put it in shortest words and simplest terms, we basically want to dive into health and wellness.
Yeah. So a little bit of background for me is basically I am a financial advisor, and that's pretty much just the amount that we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I also...
for people who are wondering, there's just simply like a compliance issue with financial advisor and the financial institutions that they report to. And in order for you to like come on any sort of platform at all, even as small as this one, you have to like get a very long list of questions pre-approved and not really veer from the topic, and make sure that like comments are really kept in check. And so it was just much easier to be like, let's just skip that.
Yeah.
Tom's financial advisor. If you need him, call him.
Yep.
Next. Yeah.
Check. That's my job.
Yeah.
Autobiographical. That's what I do.
There you go.
But I have also written a book on mindfulness before, and it's been a practice of mine for a very long time, and I'm very interested in mindset and all we navigate in the world, and how we can support each other and support ourselves, in our highs and our lows and things like that. And so I think that's where we really vibed. and
Absolutely.
that's what I wanted to talk about, and that's really what we kind of stuck on, was this idea of, mindfulness and mindset. And yeah, it can be in a professional setting, because that's kind of where this podcast kind of gravitates toward. But if you're not doing the work at home, that naturally goes into your into your business and everything along those lines. So, I mean, it's inherently going to always come back to, what are you doing for yourself?
And I think there's even a bigger correlation, because on this podcast, 99% of guests, like me, are running their own small business.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The
And
connection
hey, guess what? It's super stressful sometimes.
It's super stressful pretty much all the time, but it's still the move, especially with tax law in the USA. That's really, your best way to really, get everything you can from Uncle Sam and make good money.
I think beyond that, the people who have the entrepreneurial drive, the small business owners, and the people who are just out there trying to make it, it's just a rare breed, right?
Yeah.
And they see more for themselves. They see more for how they can show up for other people, right? And there's nothing wrong with the person who goes and does the 9-to-5 grind, right?
Absolutely not.
But there's just something else. There's an itch. There's an entrepreneurial itch that you can show up, and you can do a bit more, and you can connect with people a bit deeper, and that's where we all sit. And it's not the easy way out, right?
But also, for me to add on to everything you just said, I don't want to report to anybody.
Oh yeah, that's the freedom.
I
There's
can't
a freedom,
stand
right?
it. Like, I, from a young age, was always put at the top position for, going back to even scouts. Like, as early and as quick as I could, I was the head of my patrol, then the head of the whole troop, captain of tennis team, co-captain of basketball team, just, always put at basically the highest level I could below an adult, like the coach or the troop leader or whatever. And, business classes in college were at least at my college, shout out to Hartwick College, the business program there, as you got higher and higher, it was a lot of classes that at the end of the day, we were breaking into a group of 6 and we were doing like a semester long project. And I immediately was just the leader of the group.
Sure.
Because it just, I had, been in the group where no one really had a leader and no one really did anything. And then the night before the project, we're all meeting in the library.
Everybody
and being
shows
like,
up and like, all right.
Being like, we're here till it's done.
Yeah.
And we get that like C+ and we're like, okay, cool. And then, the other projects where I just kind of like jump in and I'm like, okay, I got an idea. Let's not do that. You do part C, you do part D, you do nothing because you suck, and then you'll proofread it at the end because you're a good writer, and let's just use all our strengths and not do that. And all of a sudden, C+, A-.
Yeah, and that's that itch, that's that drive.
Yeah.
That's that desire to say, I can show up and I can do more. And not only can I do more when I show up, but I can bolster other people. I can lift other people up and get other people motivated or support other people in some way.
Yeah.
Right. And so, obviously there's the entrepreneurs who, don't care about other people, and good luck to them. But the people that I want to be associated with, the people that I, gravitate toward, they have this inherent desire to show up for people. Right.
That goes back to just us vibing at that first networking event.
Oh, yeah,
where we weren't even interested in what the other person did for a living or trying to get like work. We were just like interested in our hobbies, and big coffee discussions immediately broke out.
Oh yeah, that's bound to happen if you sit down with me at some point.
How is the dirty chai? Does it pass
It's
the
good,
Tom
man. It's
test?
good.
Okay,
it's good.
Okay.
I like it. I like it.
It's probably not cocoa and cinnamon level.
Oh,
but it's pretty good.
I set my expectations and enjoy where I am as best I can,
Hence the mindset.
Mindfulness and mindset, right?
Do you remember either, or hopefully both, the like age and also the like
big event that kind of made you stop assessing life in the negative aspects and then kind of move into a more mindfulness zone? It probably wasn't like a very simple switch where you just went from A to B. It was a gradual thing.
The switch was immediate.
Okay, it was. Did like a big life event occur, or was it just a certain age, maturity kicked in?
I mean, maturity is a very big word, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what that really is for anybody at any time. For me, the catalyst was the loss of my dad, right? And I can look back and see how everything just started shaking up at that moment.
How old were you?
Geez, how old am I now? I guess I was about 32.
Okay.
So it was about 7 or 8 years ago. And that made me question what was going on, right? And, as his health deteriorated, other aspects of my life deteriorated as well. And then finally everything just kind of, crapped out all about the same time. And after he passed, I found myself basically homeless and jobless, sleeping on friends' couches from a life that I had that was very different than that. And then I had to rebuild, and this was me learning to be a father, which has become the most amazing aspect of my life. But this was relearning life, because everything disappeared, and I was at ground zero.
Where was your mom at this point?
She's in upstate New York.
Okay.
Right? And so, luckily I have friends down here who, let me sleep in back rooms, let me sleep on couches, and found myself as a career, I found myself moving in places where I could develop again and find some level of security. But, throughout all of that, I was looking for my answers. And
to life.
To life.
Yeah.
Everything different people, when you lose someone, everybody approaches it in a different way, right? And for me, it's respecting that everybody approaches it in a different way. Everybody has their way of healing and their time to heal. And you can't judge somebody on that.
Yeah, grieving there's no science in grieving.
No,
people can grieve in 5 seconds or 10 years.
And then you don't know, right? There's no ability to look at it and be like, oh, this is how bummed out I'm going to be when this person's gone.
Right, yeah. I expect to be down for 3 months, and then I'll just bounce
jot this down on my calendar and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Life doesn't work that way.
No, it usually is like, at least in my experience, it's usually like almost no emotion immediately. And then out of nowhere, like 5 months later, I'll watch some sad movie and I'll like uncontrollably sob, and I'll realize that's because I miss my grandpa.
Yeah. And then, giving yourself that grace to understand that those things pop up. My dad's been gone 7 or 8 years. I still get choked up sometimes because I wish he was around to see his granddaughter. Yeah. Because I miss my dad, that's going to be my whole life. Right.
Like the inflection in your tone of voice is almost like you say, like, I miss my dad. Like there's somebody judging you for missing your dad. Like people miss their dad when their dad's alive.
Yeah.
Like my dad's not here. I miss him. We went to a baseball game on Tuesday. Yeah. I would have liked him to be at the baseball game I went to yesterday. Yeah. Like, he's alive and in good health.
But when they can't be there anymore,
it's that much worse.
It makes it that much more difficult, right?
You constantly play could have, should have.
We can talk about that.
Well, I can talk of my own personal experience when specifically my dad's dad, my grandpa, passed away. I, was riddled with, man, why didn't I call him more?
Yeah, that's a dangerous game to play.
Why didn't I go like down to Florida for more weekends to just shoot the shit?
Right. And so that's where you get into that position where you can either learn lessons from it or you can just let it beat you down.
Yeah.
Right. Because you didn't do those things. And I've got those same situations in my mind. And at the end of the day, you're just playing a game, right? And the game is, let me pretend what life would have been if something else had happened. Play it, enjoy it, but you better stop it quick.
There's no real good from that game.
You can piece out lessons. You can say, damn, I wish I had talked to my grandpa more. I wish I had showed up for my grandpa more. So I'm going to take that lesson and show up for people more now. And then be done, right? But
that's a very positive, like, good, quick, like, lesson from that downward spiral.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people have the ability to go from that dark spiral to be like, wait, stop, just pick the lesson.
No.
And
it's not a flip
just pick
of a
the
switch,
lesson out,
right?
and stop being bad. Yeah.
So
or stop feeling bad.
Yeah. That's what 7 or 8 years has brought me is this idea of there's going to be bad times. It's inherent to life. There's ups and there's downs. Yeah. If there aren't downs, you're not going to appreciate ups.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, it's really true.
But,
if your life was just a steady Instagram perky stream of life, you would never appreciate any of it.
No, because it's all muted.
Yeah, you have to, twist your ankle and stub your toe and miss a flight and do all of that stuff to appreciate when the stuff goes right.
Yeah. But what you can do is start to learn to take the lessons in all of the events that happen. And the more lessons you start learning, hopefully, the less you keep doing the same stupid stuff, right? And the less you keep going down the same spiral.
Yeah.
When
did you start thinking about a book?
I was a mindfulness. I attempted to be a mindfulness coach.
Okay. So I got a couple questions on that. So what is a mindfulness coach? Because I know what coach means and I know what mindfulness is, but in my experience, the mindfulness is something that I don't know if, and this is just my thinking, not a right or wrong display of information. It's not something you could be coached. You have to kind of figure it out. And you can have conversations with you about looking at a downward thing, but pulling a lesson from it. But, it's kind of like, you kind of have to just figure it out.
And see, I think that's the problem, right? Is that, there's so many ideas on what mindfulness even is, that you're gonna have different people interpreting it in different ways naturally. But then, when you say you have to figure it out yourself, I hear that as, you're just putting up a wall or a boundary to be able to access it. It's like, well, okay, well, there's books and stuff, but I really need to just tease it out myself, right? Unless you find that book or you find that person who can simplify it to a point where, you didn't need to go through all of those things to figure it out. You could just, instead of having to crawl through a valley and climb up the valley, you can just take the bridge, and get where you need to be without having to do all of that. Now, I mean, there's benefit in struggle,
right?
Because it solidifies beliefs.
Yes,
very firmly,
very well said.
But mindfulness in and of itself is just intentional focus.
Is that your definition? Because I was about to ask you.
That's it. That's all it is. If you're being mindful of washing your hands, you're intentionally focusing on washing your hands. If you're being mindful of your breath, you're intentionally focusing on the feeling of your breath in your throat or in your nose, or, whatever you decided was going to be that space that you're focusing on. That's mindfulness, right? In and of itself, outside of all the clutter of life and things like that, mindfulness is very simple. We just are not naturally mindful anymore because of society and things along those lines. So it becomes a practice because we lost it. Kids are insanely mindful. They're not worried about all these things. They're just there being joyful and things like that.
I wonder how and when we lost it.
Oh, I mean, that's going to be different for each person,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. And each society, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. If your society pushes you the way that our society pushes us, and you come from a society that is they're very much against, especially men feeling emotions, right?
There is definitely a stigma
So,
in America about men having like the ability or being allowed to be like struggling emotionally.
So that idea of being able to sit with yourself and be in a moment and feel where you are and feel what might be coming up, in our society, damn, that goes away really young.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I'm trying to think, like, did it get stamped out, or was it just like this really gradual way of seeing, movies and TV and media, and just kind of like, when I was a kid, you rarely saw like the lead male in a movie have like the emotional breakdown and then pick it back. He was just like kicking ass the whole movie or something like that,
I think it's more prevalent now than it has been. I think the ability to feel emotions and lean into the fact and being open with and honest that you might be struggling and things like that, is much more prevalent now than for males.
It's coming, a little bit.
Than it has been.
Yeah.
In recent history.
Even like little things like just therapy.
Yeah.
Like it was a big stigma to be like a guy in therapy.
Yeah.
Now it is not.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it like this, right? My grandfather was in World War II, and there wasn't really space for emotions in World War II. You were just out there doing and being, and that's it, period, right? And so my grandfather raised my father, and some level of that made it to my dad, right? And, so my dad, wonderful, amazing person, and I still adore him. He struggled with his emotions because that's how he was raised, right? And I took that next step to say, well, I'm not going to take that confusion and bring it to my daughter. I'm stopping that, right? And that's taken a lot of work, but that also means I'm extremely conscious of how I show up for her, right? Because I want her to know that it's okay to feel emotions, and I want her to know that it's okay to communicate and to take a step back and to focus on the moment and to process things and not just bottle things up. Because I think that's, at least in our society, I think that's just how things have been for a very long time. And I think a lot of people are just feeling the backlash of it now. And people are finally at a point where they're like, yes, oh my God, I do feel anxiety, or I do feel depression, or I am navigating something, or, any of these things. And I mean, you can look at, the suicide rate of guys like us and just be like, well, something has not been working.
Yeah, it's definitely has not been working.
Something has not been working.
I mean, that you mentioned the term bottling it up, and I mean that's like I can relate, because that's my biggest issue, and my girlfriend and I are working on it as we speak. Yeah. It does take effort, and I guess the term would be being mindful about it, because it is definitely like, if I do not dedicate some focus on like, okay, this bothers you, the options are do nothing, and 1 to 5 weeks from now I will explode over something unrelated, completely unrelated, and I will take it out on the correct person, or worse, the incorrect person. And that's obviously, let's be clear, both of those are awful. But to take it out on the incorrect person who's like, I'm just mowing your lawn or whatever, like that's just not an acceptable way to be a human being.
Right.
But this is all the unacceptable side. The correct option is to immediately address it.
Or at least start processing it.
Or yes.
Yeah. And I think that moves into that concept of mindset.
Yeah.
Right?
And the process is obviously, for listeners, you need to know the process is different for everybody.
Yeah.
It could be, hey, person who did something immediately, I don't like that. Let's figure out why you did that to me, or let's figure out why I don't like it if it's not something bad. Or it could be, write it in a note to talk about it with your next therapy session, or write it in your journal to re-look at a week later, or bring it up to your partner and be like, I would like to discuss this when I'm not angry, but I want you to know that like this is a topic we need to talk about maybe at a more calmer time.
Yeah.
And or something else I haven't even discovered. But like there's no cookie cutter correct answer on how you deal with it, but dealing with it needs to be the correct move. You can't just throw it on the back burner, throw it in the bottle till the bottle explodes.
Things need to be processed, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think the processing can all be started in similar ways, but how you process and then what you do after the processing is definitely person to person.
Totally.
I think everybody needs that moment of space to just sit back and, without getting overly encumbered by the emotions and just say, okay, what just happened here?
Yeah.
Right. I just need to understand what happened here. And from there, what are my next steps?
I love that you just said that, because I don't think I do that enough to just literally, before you even tell someone it bothered you, just take a moment in your own head and be like, fully understand what occurred. Because you might be reacting really fast to only half of what occurred, and you might need to really process, or even part of that process could be taking a moment and being like, wait a minute, maybe think about their perspective. Were they really trying to hurt me, or did they just misspeak, or are they not knowledgeable about something? Like that could all of a sudden be like, wait a minute, they just don't know that topic really kills me.
Yeah. I mean, and then that's that piece of just empathizing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but I want to take a step back before we go down the rabbit hole of empathizing, if we do that, and just say, that space, that momentary space of, holding off before addressing something, that came to me through mindfulness and meditation.
So you discovered that just on your own?
I took I climbed down the canyon and climbed back up the canyon.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
What kind of meditation do you do? Because I attempted transcendental meditation, where you do the ahem over and over in your head with noise canceling headphones and an eye mask, and I did it, in my opinion, for long enough to see if it would work.
Yeah. And
I did not feel that I was getting anything from it.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, though, I don't know, 8 months to a year later, with a check-in with my girlfriend, she was like, maybe you should try meditating again. I really noticed you were in a better place when you were doing it.
Yeah.
And so maybe it was one of those things where it was not a noticeable difference to my head, but was a noticeable difference to the people around me.
Yeah. Well, I think meditation is interesting, because, a lot of people try to use it as a Band-Aid. I'm in a bad spot. I better meditate. That'll fix it, right?
I used it as,
but when they're in a good spot, they don't meditate.
See, I used it as this is now part of the morning routine.
See, that's a good way to do it, right?
Yeah. It's like waking up, going to the bathroom, cold plunge, meditate. It's got to all happen, and then we can start our day.
Yeah, and when it comes to the meditation, I think that just different people need different levels of structure, right?
Yeah.
So when I meditate, there's no, it's
what's your style?
It's intentional focus for a set period of time.
10 minutes?
I don't even. I mean, I've been, I guess I don't even think about it, right? So I sit down, I might light a candle to focus on or something like that. And I just sit and I let things come up and I let them go.
Oh, so you don't mine was very, like I had like this app.
Right.
Where it was like, it played a ding to start and then, you know, had some nice music and then it would ding at the end and this guy's voice would be like, you've just completed your 15 minutes. Good job.
So warm and fuzzy.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. Have a great day.
So that's the interesting thing though. Especially when you're first being introduced to something, structure is very valuable.
Oh, for sure. My friend was like, you should try this app if you want to get into meditating. And I was like,
if you've never done anything like that before and somebody just says, just go sit. Well, what does that mean? You know, I need structure. I need to understand what I'm supposed to do.
And also there's like the stereotype of like when you think of meditating, you think of like legs crossed, like with your arms, like a Buddha and, you know, with like a Buddhist temple and like people sitting for 6 hours, like monks and stuff.
And full respect to them, first off. But
that was not a dig. I just meant there's a stereotypical stigma.
There's a lot of stereotypes and stigmas associated with all that. And that's something that I've always tried to kind of buck.
Yeah.
And be like, look, that's not what it has to be for everybody.
Yeah, it can be things that you don't even associate with meditation, like
going for a run.
I was just going to say going to the gym.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
and so, but like, you know, what I was referencing before is people need structure to be able to comprehend many different things, and you know, I have other examples of, you know, different practices I've done and things like that, and I made it through the practice. I took all the steps. And when I was done, I was like, well, I don't need to do all those things anymore. I don't need the app. I don't need the ding. I don't need the person, you know, the gratification of somebody, you know, saying, wow, boy, you did it. Good job. You know, I just do it to do it. And that's what I need now. Right.
On days that you don't, is it daily?
I wish.
How many, like, on average, like, how many days a week do you meditate?
Oh, probably 2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Right.
If you know, I don't know if you have skipped, but, like, if you go a week and you haven't done it, do you notice that week is just worse?
I don't know.
A little more angst?
I don't know. I'd say I am more on the living mindfully side as opposed to consistent meditation.
Right.
So I'm trying to be mindful in where I am and what I'm doing and being present more. And, you know, and finding, I mean, I go to the gym a bunch. I try to hike when I can. That's become more of my meditative practice than the actual moments of sitting down and actually taking the time. And, you know, and maybe that's something that I need to really reconsider.
Or maybe you meditate at the gym. Like that's, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the gym, I just listen to tunes and lift heavy things.
Yeah. For me, I'm one of those weirdos who like works out in silence.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that would be possible.
It's part of my meditation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, the 3 minutes in that cold plunge is definitely a meditative thing because there's no music and, you know, you unplug the thing, so there's not even like the sound effect of the freezer. And it's just you fighting your inner bitch for 3 minutes at 39 degrees going, I want to get out. I want to get out. I want to get out. No, don't do it. Don't do it. And then that goes away at the 30-second mark. And then you just realize that you can beat yourself every day. Like it's just you against you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it is just you against you. And it's an interesting thought process, right? Because it can also, I feel like that whole idea can also backlash.
Ooh, okay. Expand on that. Because I love personally the idea of like, just try to kill yourself from the day before, be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like this day be a little, just try to kill that clone from the day before.
It's just those moments you fail, right?
Yeah. When you know, for me, it's like, you know, if I hit the gym today and put in some good like job site work or permit work or get that cold plunge in, and for me specifically, eating right.
Yeah.
Like I can relax in the afternoon and be like, I killed that clone. Today I'm better.
Yeah.
And you are right that, like, you know, this morning, because I crashed at my girlfriend's house, I haven't cold plunged and worked out at 8 a.m.
And now you're failing.
And comparatively. I am failing. Right. But then at the same time, like, you know, I know that this podcast is making me feel good, and it was definitely on the list of things to do today. And instead of before, I'm going to work out after, and I'm still going to get it in.
Yeah.
And I happen to have 2 workers at 2 different jobs getting stuff done. So it is very much a perspective shift, because I could totally look at the morning and be like, dude, you're such an idiot. You didn't plunge. You didn't lift at 8 a.m. sharp and be showered and ready for your podcast, and then or adjust this order and realize that when the day is over, I will have gotten the exact same things accomplished, and mentally having some flexibility is probably an asset rather than being bummed that I am doing it in the incorrect order. Like, you know, I didn't, you know, eat a bunch of sluggish food this morning and not be able to gym. You know, my girlfriend made chicken sausages and egg whites. Like I'm ready to rock. You know, fueled by good fuel, and, you know, a nice relaxing morning, because this happens to be my girlfriend's weekend. Her weekend is Friday, Saturday. So I usually don't schedule stuff on Fridays, just so that, like, her and I can. You're the exception, Tommy.
Dang.
Yeah. So I try to, like, basically leave Friday and Saturday just as blank, because you know, it's like, you know, we in the modern world where everybody works, you don't get that many days, you know, together. So, but it's totally a perspective shift. You know, Corbett a year ago would have let it ruin the day. Like, Corbett a year ago would have been mad this morning and would have put on a face for this podcast, and then when you left would have, like, sunk into the couch, made poor decisions, ingested unhealthy food, lounged, pretended I was upset and depressed for no reason.
Yeah.
And it just would be because it's easy to sink into that thing. You know, it's much easier to drive to the McDonald's around the corner and get $10 of garbage than it is to drive 15 minutes to Happy and Hale and get a beautiful salad. Like,
this is sponsored by Happy. No, it's not sponsored by Happy and Hale.
I would
That'd be
kill
cool,
for Happy and Hale to sponsor this podcast. Oh my God. They could give me no money. They could just give me, like, you can have a salad once a month, and I would let them be a sponsor.
So I've had some really interesting conversations just today. This all started today about intention, right? And goals, and how those are kind of different things. There is a gentleman named Muji, and, you know, look him up on YouTube. Really interesting to listen to. And I hadn't listened to him in a long time, and I ended up pulling up one of his satsangs. And a satsang is basically people go and sit to and listen to a guru, right?
Okay.
And then they can ask questions and things like that. And this morning, you know, this really vibed with me. You know, he said, intention causes tension. And I hadn't thought about it that way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was some level of truth to it.
Could you maybe, like, give an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because I'm a little confused by this statement.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can use personal examples. Like, you know, I've tried to have some events happen. I've tried to connect with certain people. I've tried to, you know, develop a program or something like that. And I put a lot of intention behind it, and emotion behind it, and expectation behind it, that when I get to this mark, everything's going to be better. Right? And so I'm building this tension coming up to this space through expectation and things like that, that when I get there, things are going to be different. And recently I had multiple irons in the fire with a lot of that type of intention behind it. and every single one of them fell flat. And
you were relying too much on the success of those.
I had invested too much of my emotion,
right,
and expectation into those things. So when an event fell out, or when a person didn't reach out to me, or when, a plan completely failed, in and of themselves, one at a time, they're okay. Right. But when they all happen at once,
it's a lot.
With enough tension, eventually you snap.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that happened to me like yesterday. And so, I needed to find my way to navigate all of that, which involved, I needed a mental health day. I went hiking. I processed things, right? And I came back today great, but with some clarity and understanding, right? And so I was talking with somebody earlier today, and, she said, she kind of reframed it and said, well, you're looking for intention without tension, right? Removing the tension, removing the emotional attachment to the success that you'll gain in that space. And so intention in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. And that's where I want to differentiate the idea of intention versus goals, right?
Right.
You can have the goal to work out at 8 a.m. every day. You can have the goal to, eat healthy and stuff like that. If you don't meet a goal, there's not really as many emotional attachments to it. I didn't get that one this time. I'll get it next time, right? But if you're, at least for me anyway, when I'm setting an intention, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of emotion attached to it. And I guess it's something to be more aware of for myself personally, that, maybe I'm not so much setting intentions for things as setting goals, and then being open to how they shift.
There's a very interesting line though of, you don't, at least strictly from the business perspective, there's a very fine line of like, do you want to do a bunch of businessy stuff for your personal small business and not be emotionally invested? Like for me, I am probably too much. I am extremely emotionally invested in my projects.
Right.
And when somebody screws them up, I take it very personally, and I make them fix it. And
well, I mean, accountability is important, right?
No, for sure. I guess it's maybe, accountability, intention, goal, they are obviously different words, but they definitely, there's a huge overlap in the Venn diagram of those words.
And I mean, and then at some point we're just playing with terminology, right?
That's a very good point too.
And one, and it, I could talk on this one for days too. It's like two people can interpret the same word in very different ways.
That's a good point.
But I think the conversation is trying to get across what you mean,
right,
when you're saying a word.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's important to care for what you do. And you yourself said that maybe you're too emotionally invested, right?
Yeah.
So if something goes sideways,
it affects me more than it probably should.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and then this is what I'm working on right now. So let's just say, what if you're more open to the present moment and being able to pivot or persevere when something happens, as opposed to being so emotionally invested in how you expect it to happen that when it doesn't happen the way you expect it to, you're knocked out for a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm working toward. Right. Yeah. I'm a very resilient person, and I'm proud of that. But that also means that I need to have that time to be resilient. I need to have that time to rebound. Right. So if there's a space where I can be less emotionally focused on what I really wanted to happen and more focused on what happened and what I can do with it, what I can learn from it, and how I can use it to my advantage, then I feel like I'm in a better space, because I don't have to rely on my resilience. I don't have to rely on grit. I don't have to dust myself off and get back up and go again, because I don't have to stop. I can just be moving and pivoting and moving forward, right? And I see the value in that personally. And that's my path that I want to be able to lead. So, and life is always a work in progress.
That's for sure.
And so I always hear these people on podcasts, or I see those Instagram people, and how damn perfect their lives are, right? Or how they've, all those different things. And there's so much value in just the authenticity of falling on your face sometimes.
I couldn't agree more, to the point where I've actually in the last year begun to unfollow a lot of stuff on social media, because I have realized the direct unhealthy effect it is having on me.
Oh yeah. Or the fact that it's just this generation's reality TV. None of it's real.
That's true. Yeah. A lot of it is not real. It's true.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to figure out the real and unreal.
Yeah.
And I am a big fan of a video where you see some person taking a picture of some influencer, and then and they're standing in the pool, and then some really hilarious dude will run and do a huge cannonball right behind her, just splash everything and ruin the shot. And I'm like, that's the guy I love. Yeah. Or the Graham versus reality picture, where it's you see this stunning person in this stunning picture, and then the camera pans to the left, and there's 75 other people, and they just begged
all doing the same pose or whatever.
Yeah, or they just begged everybody to move for 4 minutes, and it's that's not
it's
reality.
A hard precedence, man. I mean, it's really hard to be able to meet that, and I think that a lot of people think that's life. Right. And
I got fooled years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend that I didn't see a bunch of, absolutely jaw dropping, bikini models or whatever on Instagram, and me thinking oh, that's a person I could meet and date and actually absolutely
you never
not.
Know, man. You never know. I mean,
that person lives in Turkey.
Well, I mean, that's a good reason that you can't. But I mean, it's
just
I think outside of trying to match someone else's concept of what they think is perfect, this is loving yourself enough to understand that you're valuable enough to get whatever you really would like, right? And without diving too deep into the idea that you're special.
Dude, dive in. We got time.
I mean, there's that idea of you're special. You can do anything you want in this life, and blah 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 blah. And it's yeah, maybe. But if you love yourself and you really care about yourself, then you open yourself to more possibilities, right? And I might never be an astronaut because I'm 40 and have bad eyes and a million different reasons, but I can love myself enough to be open to what I can be and see how things show up for me, and not write myself off as not being able to do something that's right in front of me because I'm not good enough or something along those lines, right? And I think that's part of the problem with that whole Instagram life thing is these people are not real, right? And real people are trying to match these unreal expectations, and you just start disliking who you are. And I mean, this is not new, right?
No, this is much,
models in magazines 30, 40 years ago. This is just people comparing themselves to other people. It's become a bigger industry when anybody can do it.
Well, it's also it has become it was still a problem 30 years ago when it was magazines or whatever.
Yeah. But
now we have 30 years of data of how it has affected, especially people younger than us. Today's high school, specifically today's high school girls, are comparing themselves to a person who literally gets paid to eat right and work out all day, all year, is photographed professionally on a $20,000 camera with professional lights, And, oh, by the way, after the picture's taken, it's airbrushed and put in Photoshop, and there's a filter. And as far as Instagram tells you, that's just their natural beauty.
Yeah, that's
and you have to be like, first of all, in high school, you're still developing.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally. Right. And then you have to look at this and be like, that's what I'm supposed to look like. What do I have to do to look like that? And it's not even possible.
It's not.
You're literally comparing yourself to an anime character.
Yeah.
It's like it's not real.
Yeah.
And that has now we have like actual years of data going from, we think this is bad, to there's some data that shows this is awful.
Yeah.
Like, this is really terrible. Yeah. And like, I am not intelligent enough to, throw out the like correct statistics, but I know that there are increased depression in high school kids.
Oh yeah.
The suicide rate has gone up, and it's especially awful in high school females. Like, it's atrocious.
And it all comes back to the idea of personal value.
Yeah.
Valuing yourself, loving yourself, caring about yourself, you know, and that's, I feel like that's the everyday struggle for a lot of people beyond anything else, is like just being happy and loving yourself, just really appreciating yourself as an individual. Right.
Yeah. It can be very hard.
It's very hard. It took me 38 years to figure out. And it's not something people talk about. Right. And then that circles back to, especially for, you know, guys, you know, how many guys you know would say, oh yeah, I love myself. Right. I can't really think of many. Right.
No.
And when you go down that path of trying to understand what that means and what that feels like, or when you go down the path of trying to be more mindful and you start having these shifts in your life, you run out of people to talk to. Right. And that in and of itself can be a very stressful situation, because you've moved beyond the norms and the status quo, and you have to be confident in yourself to be able to move beyond those things. And I mean, that can go with moving beyond the concept of what's beautiful as an Instagram model, right?
Yeah.
For a young girl, you know, I mean, my little girl's 7. Those things are going to be coming up, right?
Yeah, you're going to have to deal with
it.
it.
How do you show up for them, right?
Yeah.
I talk to her about self-love, and I'm, you know, I say, you know, we talk about love, and it's like, do you love yourself? And she's like, yes, I do. And I'm like, that's wonderful. And, you know, and then we start kind of dissecting, what does that look like, right? Conversations I never had, nothing against anyone who raised me, but they weren't things to be thought about, right? And so those are the kind of things that I like to approach, because I've gone through those times where I wish I had loved myself, because I would have viewed things differently. I would have viewed my value differently.
Oh,
I would have accepted
you
help.
Saying that hits so close to home, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's especially me in the physical attribute side of my life, because I've been dealing with this foot thing for ever. And from age like 19 to a year ago, I just hid that I was in agonizing pain in every step. Yeah. Every single step. And I never appreciated that my body could do anything else because of how much pain I was in the bottom of my foot. And now I'm post a surgery without that pain. And it was like the little thing of being able to go a week ago and play kickball. Just to be able to kick the ball and run at full speed, which for me is very slow, just to run at full speed. And when the next guy kicked, be able to go first to third. Like, it's kickball. This doesn't matter at all. Yeah. But the amount of just like, you know, relief of being like, all right, this is the test. Let's see how those titanium screws work. Sure. And, you know, it worked. And it's like, does kickball matter? 0%. But in like,
sound like it mattered a little bit.
In Corbett's life journey, it was a big moment.
So it mattered. Right?
Yeah.
And then I mean, I think you just touched on something really important. Moments matter, right? And it doesn't necessarily. It's not always going to be what you expect it to be. It's not going to be, you know, labeled as some momentous occasion that Corbett went and played kickball.
Yeah, there's
Or
there's
that,
no music in like a Hollywood movie of the
Or
crescendo
that
moment.
you run into some person coincidentally or something like that. But moments matter.
Yeah.
Because you're going to show up differently because of that moment.
That's the big thing you just said. I realized that, and I talked about it yesterday on the podcast with Josh and Sarah from SprayNet, shout out, that like, I don't know what the percentage is. I think I said 90 and 10, but I realized that for the last 10, 12 years, whatever, like a long time of my life, me as Corbett, as a human, was just never 100%. I was always 90%. And just 10% of my ability to be a good, happy, regular human being was removed because of the chronic pain. So that 10% can be all kinds of things. Me being short with somebody, me not wanting to do something that I would like to do, me being upset about an event when in reality I'm just scared about how far we have to park. You know? Yeah. And that's like, I don't want to tell somebody I don't want to go to the Duke football game because I'm worried about how far we're going to park. But I've had to do that. Yeah. Like 8 years ago with a past girlfriend. I was like, well, what's the parking like? Because even if I put on my good walking shoes, I got about half a mile in me before it really, really goes from the regular pain to the worst pain. And I become a really annoying human. And it just, that is not fair for everyone in my circle. Yeah. To just have to, for them to do absolutely nothing, for them to just be existing, and then me just never being that like full optimal. And I know that nobody is ever their 100% optimal all day, every day. Yeah. But even in the peak and valley of like, oh, I'm having a bad day, I've dipped to 60%, and then I'm going to bounce back up. I never would ever bounce back up past that 90, if you get the metaphor I'm trying to. Yeah, I do. And
I think it's really interesting because I think there are a lot of people who live that same way, but because of fear and mental issues and things that are on their mind, where yours was actually a physical pain that only lets you go up to 90%. I think there are a lot of people in the world who might not even be able to hit that 90%, and it's all internal.
Oh, 100%. And there's so many things, from your living situation to your relationship to, I don't think people think enough about the food that they put in their body, especially in this country. Yep. This country, we are not so slowly just killing ourselves with garbage, and we are fooled into thinking that it is the right food, and it is just not. Yeah. That's a big one. And I know I can do that. I can say that very confidently from personal experience, because there have been times in my life when I was eating garbage and I felt like garbage, and I thought it was because I was depressed about something else. But in reality, it was like, dude, you feel sluggish. Your body's full of inflammation because you're just eating processed trash. Yeah. And like, guess what? If you eat great fuel, your body will be better fueled. Yeah. If you don't eat inflammatory foods, all of a sudden your joints will not hurt because there's not all this inflammation everywhere. It's not hard, but it is hard.
It is, and I mean, keep going back to the idea of society, right? Right. It's hard because, for one, it's not necessarily easy to get those foods, right? And two,
it's just, I think it's just easier to get the crap.
Right.
Like the healthy
food. So if
food,
it's easier to get the crap, it means it's less easy to get the good stuff.
Yeah, right? I mean, touche. Yeah. Fair enough.
And then also it's an education thing.
100%.
Right. And I think a lot of the issues just really boil down to, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you might think you're doing the right thing because nobody told you more in,
it's the wrong thing.
In a more in-depth way what is actually happening. And I mean, that can circle back to the mindfulness, that can circle back to diet, that can circle back to, anything we've talked about. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. I have a friend, I don't want to call anybody out, but like the way that they eat is atrocious.
Yeah.
And they don't like to try new stuff, and they don't like most flavors. They will never like, hey, you want to try that? No. Like, well, chicken tenders, mashed potatoes, like, but it stems from just like they basically grew up with, parents that were not around, and when they were not good parents, and they basically had to raise themselves. Yeah. And this is what they know. And it's like, it's exactly what you said. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just all the more harder the older they get to try to change the way.
Oh, I mean, change in and of itself is just a terrifying thing for a lot of people.
But it's admittedly, all change is harder the older you get.
All changes, and then admittedly, change is the only constant.
That's all. Man, we're getting deep today. Yeah.
It's
what is the sound of one hand clapping?
It's true though, right? And I think I think a lot of stress in the world, and back to society and all that stuff is just clawing tooth and nail to not let change happen, when change is going to happen regardless of how much effort you're putting in to not let it happen.
Yeah. And that, we tie that right back into small business owners. If you're not adapting and changing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And if you're dying, why are you clinging on to this idea of the small business without adapting and changing? Like,
this is good. Yeah. This goes back to that idea of goals, right? And, the way I see a goal is, maybe it's achievable. Some people like to set goals that are not achievable just for drive.
Shoot the moon.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But you can see the goal and then decide if you're pivoting or persevering on that goal, right? And I think that's the job of the entrepreneur. That's the job of the small business owner, is you have your ideas and you set your goals, and are they being met? And what are you doing if you need to adjust them?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you're good. It's just a screensaver.
All right.
I didn't know. No, you're good. No.
But I think that's the drive, is also, do you have the creativity and understanding to pivot? What are the next steps for you if this goal is not achieved? Right? And so I think that's the core of it, right? And how are you approaching those things without the emotional attachment?
Yeah.
These are just
difficult.
Oh, it's very difficult.
Yeah. That part is very difficult, just because I keep coming back to, like, for the most part, you would hope that people started a small business out of passion for the thing that the small business is circling around. And passion and emotion go hand in hand, and passion, emotion, your business goals, and it's difficult to be like, okay, the business has this goal and I am unemotionally invested in it. Like, that may be the move, but it's hard. Yeah. It's just a very difficult thing.
Well, I think that's the practice, right? Is being present.
Yeah.
And, it's being mindful.
Yeah. And for me, like, I had a podcast guest schedule, we're back and forth messaging, blah, blah. Oh yeah, put it in my calendar. Yeah, me too. Oh, okay, cool. Here's the address. Okay, thanks. Blah, 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 blah. Then the day of, 2 hours beforehand, hey, we're still good for 11. No call, no show, no text, didn't arrive. And it's like, it really wrecked me for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Old Corbett, day would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
But, today's Corbett, who is probably not the expert you are in mindfulness, but I'm still like trying to do some of the self-practice myself.
I did mention that I had an emotional face plant, right?
But you worked through it. That's the whole point. You practiced what you're preaching to not destroy yourself. You know, you didn't shave your head and move to Alaska. You just said, I need to go hiking and hone it back in. But like I texting my girlfriend, like, what the hell? Yeah. Like, just say you don't want to come on the podcast. Like,
that speaks to something else that's been popping up a lot for me, and it's just respecting other people
and their time
and respecting other people's time. Like, if you think your personal time is valuable, then why do you not think that someone else's time is equally valuable for them? Right? That's something that, that raises my hackles a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm trying to show up for you, and I respect if you don't want to show up for me, but let me know.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I'm inherently a giving person, and I know a lot of people who are inherently giving people, and without the reciprocity and without the communication and respect, you just burn out. Right.
I have burned out for sure.
Yeah. And it's like the least someone else can do is say no.
Yeah.
Right. And because we're trying to open ourselves up to other people because we have something we can do to support them and help them, in my mind. And if you don't want it, be clear with it, because it's better to know than to be floating in some sort of limbo of unknowing, or to just disappear from someone, right? Because it might be easy for you to disappear. It might be the easiest choice to just tuck tail and run, but you're not taking into account and you're not empathizing with the person on the other side, right? And it's bonkers when it's an entrepreneur doing it to an entrepreneur.
I had two where they were both entrepreneurs, and I was like, if you were to call me in 6 months needing me, I would now be salty about helping you. And why?
And beyond that, like just at a base level, you know how hard it is.
Well, one of them's a realtor, and I'm like, your entire job is communicating.
Yeah.
Like realtors use the same MLS. So really, you just have to communicate.
Yeah.
And any realtors listening, I love y'all. I use y'all
awesome.
all the time. Yeah. And
good people.
I know your job is hard, but like they're just like a general contractor. There's a million of us.
Yeah.
And we all do the same thing when you boil down the process. So if you're going to be a realtor and then dick me around for a coffee meeting and not show up and then apologize an hour later, then we get the coffee because I have a flexible schedule and we make a podcast meeting, and then you don't show up to the podcast meeting. Guess what? You're never going to have me recommend you to anybody who needs a realtor.
Yeah.
You just lost any potential chance of ever being recommended as a realtor because you're not reliable enough to text me the day before and tell me, in this case, your babysitter canceled, which I don't even believe.
Well, I mean, regardless, it comes back to that idea of value.
Yeah.
And personal value and respect, and then empathy, right?
And also put it in your calendar.
Well, I mean,
be organized.
Organization, that's its own thing, but, organization or not, I think it really boils down to those other pieces.
I think it's very much, I think organization is a huge step in those pieces, though. I weigh it more than most, but I also have like a big heart on for organization, both mentally and physically. Like yesterday, I got like a big kick out of buying my girlfriend a new tool bag and converting her 2 crappy tool bags into one really nice one and be like, here you go. Organized, done, one bag. Your drill fits. I bought you a little 6-part organizer for all your different screws. You're done.
Yeah.
And she was like, this is way better. I was like, I know. Trust, if there's one thing I know is tools.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I weigh organization a little bit more, but I personally feel that organization in general helps more aspects of your life than we like to connect. Just being able to have your schedule organized, even things like your closet organized in general, keeping a clean home, an organized home. Like this just removes, the 5 minutes of stress 3 days a week looking for something. That's 15 minutes you just got back.
Or just having that clutter around can really
clutter's really not, a cluttered house leads to a cluttered mind, leads to a cluttered lifestyle, I would weigh, I am not dating anymore. I have a long-term girlfriend, but like when I was going on like dates and things like that, I would very much be judging the potential female to date on how clean her car was. That's a huge factor for me, because like if you can't take the mere minutes to throw away the garbage on the floor in your car, that to me is like, I'm not, your house is probably not clean enough. I wouldn't trust you to clean my thing or be clean around. Like it just, that to me, that's such a huge way to be like, oh, well, you don't have the time to do that. Probably not going to be making the time to be on time to stuff, or, you're going to be the person who's always 10 minutes late.
That's interesting.
And like for me, who's always 10 minutes early, that will really bug me.
Yeah.
Like you can't be 10 minutes late every time. I'm just going to get the person who's not 10 minutes late, especially in a work circumstance.
I want to play devil's advocate on that.
Dude, play devil's advocate all day.
So, what about the person who simply doesn't have the time? What about the person who...
I question what your life is like that you don't have that time. Because in my head, whether it's right or wrong, I will admit it is not, my head is not the correct, statue that we must all follow. It's my mind. In my mind, there's time, just like there's time to get to the gym.
Yeah.
So if you also, when you clean the car once, it's very easy to keep it clean.
Yeah.
I'm
thinking at a grander scale, right? Like,
no, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, what are you in my, okay, but to play the devil's advocate back, what is being prioritized over the gym or the cleaning the car or the thing like that?
I guess what I'm tiptoeing around is the idea of like, is it the emotional clutter that makes the physical clutter, or is it the physical clutter that makes the emotional clutter?
It's probably 6 to 1, half a dozen the other, and dependent on the person. I'm sure it goes both directions. But for me, it's such a duh to be like, if I lived in a dirty, cluttered house and I had a dirty, cluttered car, there would be so much wasted time trying to find this and that. Whereas if I was like, okay, sacrifice, this is obviously a hypothetical, sacrifice half a Sunday, clean and organize the house, get a $12 label maker, clean and organize the car, then you're going to incrementally get all those chunks of time where you were looking for something back.
Yeah.
And it would take not long before you noticed, like, oh, I would waste 10 minutes every morning looking for the car keys or looking for the whatever. And all of a sudden they're not, because they're on the hook that says key by the door. Like, and you start doing those little things and, it adds up.
Yeah.
And
so, years ago, and I think it's probably still a thing, but there was a big push toward minimalism.
I love minimalism.
And I get that. But
if you take away the power tools I need for a living, I have a pretty minimalist lifestyle.
So, but I know people who were becoming minimalist to achieve mental well-being.
Interesting.
And then that was, chicken or egg kind of conversation. Are you becoming minimalist to achieve mental wellness, or if you achieve mental wellness, would you inherently want less of those things?
Right? Such an interesting way to look at it.
That's kind of what I was tiptoeing around as we've been talking through this, is that idea of like, if you're achieving wellness and some mental clarity, maybe the house would just be cleaner because you would see the value in doing smaller steps to keep up with things more. maybe you would be removing things that really aren't filling your cup that much. Maybe you would be moving toward that minimalist, well-structured, clean home because you feel better about you and feel better about who you are and how you want to show up and where you want to be. Or is it do all the things, fix all the things, and then maybe it's going to blossom into some sort of mental well-being?
Yeah, that's a dangerous slope, though, because when you mentioned about like having intentions and goals and being like, when I get there, I'll be better.
Exactly.
And then you get there and you're not better.
Exactly.
So it's like,
it's a really easy way to fail.
It's
right?
a very easy way to fail.
If I clean the house, then I'm going to feel better about myself.
See, I look at it more as like, if you clean the house, your day-to-day life will just be a little better and a little easier. You won't go from I'm broken to I'm fixed, but just things will just get a little bit easier. You in this particular instance of this fake person we're making up, you would notice there's 5 minutes where you were not trying to sort through a drawer that had 4 types of clothes in it. Because when you had 4 drawers with different types, you could just, socks are up here, grab them, let's go. Yeah. Now, let's be clear. I am overkill. Like, I admit that. I have clothes in bins with labels. I'm a psychopath. I love it, though. Like, it makes my life easier. I'm also the psychopath who has 27 identical pairs of socks and never has to think about an outfit. I grab the exact identical pair of short black socks that I'm wearing right now, and there is no other option unless I'm putting on a suit, and I have 2 pairs of suit socks. Like, that's just, all of my boxer briefs are one color, one brand. They look identical. Like, there's just no thought process to it. And I remove that aspect of my life. Mm-hmm. And I know and feel that it is better for me personally.
Right.
That's not the cut and dry for everybody else.
Yeah. And, I think everything we're talking about today, and, to be, completely clear and transparent, everything we talk about is person to person.
100%. There is no solution that's cut and dry for everybody.
Yeah.
But being open to lots of potential solutions, I think, is kind of like our general message of like,
tools in your tool bag.
There's so many tools, like proper nutrition. People don't even think about proper hydration anymore.
Yeah.
Standing out in the freaking sun for 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, can be such an incredible amount to, and if you have a private back deck, just walk out there butt naked, get your whole body in some vitamin D for 4 minutes. It will really adjust the way that you feel. I don't think there's anybody who disagrees with the need for exercise. The mental health benefit is beyond. I mean, I need the dopamine. The physical attributes, I mean, if you want to look a certain way, you got to work out a certain way. Yeah. And, you can fight the science if you want, but it is just known. There is no way to strengthen bones other than good calcium and lifting heavy stuff. Like, it's just end of story. You want to adjust your muscle tone, do whatever the hell you want. If you want to trip at 80 and not break a hip, you need to strengthen your bones. Like, that's just the end of the story. I don't care what you want to look like. And if you don't believe me, look up Peter Attia, who is a legitimate doctor who works with elderly females to prevent this kind of thing. And he has them all deadlifting because it's not so that their hip bones are stronger. Like, there's some science. I'm not smart enough to translate it, but I know it's there. And then, those are the obvious ones for sure.
Yeah.
But then there's, we've mentioned meditation. We've mentioned, just getting outside, going for a walk. That kind of fits under exercise a little bit. Your social circle, I think, is not talked about enough because
that's important.
It's very important, and more so who's not in the circle.
That is the key.
It's very, very important. And yes, it's really hard to remove somebody who's been in your circle for a very long time when you realize that they might be a negative aspect to your mental health.
Even people, we're both in a bunch of networking circles.
Yeah.
Right? And, you run into people who, you get a good feeling when you want to hang out with them and stuff like that. And then, where do you draw that line to be like, oh, wait, this isn't right for me. I need something else.
There's one I will not go back to, the one we actually met at, because of this vibe I'm getting from one of the dudes who kind of sets it up. Yeah. And he muttered some shit to somebody next to him about my Iron Man shirt and my Iron Man tattoo, but I could still hear him. And I was like, okay, I did nothing to you. Yeah. What's your beef? Yeah. And then I get this stink eye from him from across the room the last 2 events. And I'm like, I don't need this crap. Sure.
Yeah. And
it's like you're an old dude stuck in your ways, and you're just judging me.
I mean, that's its own thing, right? Yeah. But I'm thinking more along the lines of you want to give people the benefit of the doubt when you're first meeting people.
Yeah,
you want to have some level of trust that not only are they out for themselves, but they want to support other people,
and just being a little open.
Yeah,
there's definitely remember when we met and you vibed so hard with that German sword enthusiast.
Yeah, I do.
I will 100% admit, incorrectly, I judged that dude based on his little speech impediment, tick, whatever. Turned out to be one of the most lovely people.
Yeah.
I was just wrong. I was just incorrect. I judged that dude on a physical attribute and turned out to be one of the nicer people we've met.
Yeah.
And it was just me being stupid for no reason at all.
Yeah. It's, it's experiencing people where they are. Right. And I think this finally gets to that conversation of empathy that's been kind of tiptoed around a little bit. And, being able to show up for somebody and experience as best we can, experience where they're coming from. And regardless if you agree with it, and regardless if you want to partake in German longsword fighting,
right?
Being able to sit with that person and understand where they're coming from, because that makes it a lot easier to have a conversation.
What ticked for me was just how he was so incredibly passionate about such a niche thing that very few people could relate to.
And I just happened to.
You happen to be one of those guys, but just seeing him kind of in the process of, the fucking event was only 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, it was a very short networking event. And within 20 minutes, this guy kind of went from little turtly shell tongue like this to an explosive, animated, exciting dude.
Because people accepted him.
And that's all it took.
People accepted him.
Yeah. And it took me to see you and I vibed, and then 20 minutes later, I see you and him having this insane conversation about swords, and I'm like, oh my God, this is adorable.
Yeah.
And just you don't necessarily see that kind of passion today, period.
Right.
And it was cute, and it was it rubbed off on the event, just that passion. We were all just kind of amped a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was great.
So, that's what I like to do at any event. I love just talking to people, right?
Yeah.
And I like to get to know where they're coming from, what their life's like, just because I like it, And I like experiencing a connection with people, whatever it's about, right? And if it happens to be something that I have a background in,
all the better.
All the better.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's just really nice to let people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? In a world that is just inundated with things that make us uncomfortable, just to have a couple moments where you can just be present and put your guard down and just talk about something and relax. And then go put your guard back up and talk to somebody else, whatever,
I loved Deb Lovick, who kind of runs that Rockstar event at NAMU that we met at. I loved her way of saying it, where it's instead of walking up to somebody and being like, hi, I do this for a living. What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
Deb is we don't do that. She much prefers to go, oh, hey, how are you? What you working on these days? Because that could be a passion project unrelated to your work.
Yep.
That could be a German sword recreation you're building. That could be whatever your job is. But to limit the soul of a person to what you do for a living, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
And I've kind of taken that to heart, because whatever the answer is, if you're me or you for that matter, you can always respond with, oh, I'm a general contractor. Here's my card. You know, I don't care what you do for a living. You probably will or do already own a home or will one day, and you might need me. So like you can break that ice at those networking events without trying to just look like you're there for business.
Yeah. And I mean, I go for community.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's where we met. That's where I've met a lot of other people that I really vibe with, and I'm happy to have in my life. And, you know, I went for years without community. And
to clarify, you went in life with years without community, or you went to networking events without looking for community?
I went life without community.
Okay. Just to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's something that was very important to me for a long time and just unattainable. And so,
was that because of like the dark place in your life after losing your dad, where you just kind of shut yourself off from looking for it, or you just?
No, it goes back to that, you know, something we've talked about in the past is, you know, that the fear reaction versus the abundance reaction, right? And if you're living in a space where there's fear involved in your life for whatever reason, could be, you know, just security, money, you know, feeling unloved, whatever, and a fear that something negative is going to happen because of all of that. There's this level of desperation that comes out, right? And it can be extremely minute, but it's present. And, you know, the way I like to think about it is like, if you're trying to throw for a bullseye and your goal is to hit that bullseye, but you have that desperation, you know, you're just gonna miss.
Right.
You might hit one of the outside bullseyes. You know, you might, but you're not hitting target, right? And the more you do that, the farther away from the target that you get.
Yeah, if you go up to bat and you're like, I must hit a home run, you will strike out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go up to the bat going, okay, we're just going to do our best to get the bat on the ball.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have
a
better
better
results.
Opportunity. Right?
Always.
And, you know, so.
I'm good at sports analogies.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's fine.
Especially baseball.
Yeah. So, but with that idea in mind, you know, I went through many, many years of struggle and with fear being some level of a motivational driver. And with that came, even if it was the most minute level of desperation, there was desperation to have some success, desperation to have community, desperation to build a life where I had lost so much, right? And I think that was what was holding me back, as the fear,
just fear,
and the desperation. And I'm not talking desperation like hands and knees begging. I'm talking desperation like a gentle tug.
I'll stop you there. It's relative.
Yeah,
desperation is desperation.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're begging on the corner or your bank account is flush. If life brought you down from where you were to where you are and it's desperation, it's desperation.
It is.
And I want to reiterate that, because you can't just only judge somebody on, like, hypothetically a financial situation. Like, rich people get depressed.
Sure.
Like, it's, you know, you can't just be like, what does that guy have to worry about? Like, we see this a lot with like celebrities, you know, who actually apparently have a big depression problem because of how they are closed off from the community.
Even the ones that you think that are like, you know, doing so well.
Yeah, but when you think about it, it's like, oh, how could they be depressed in the house, in the
Anthony
car?
Bourdain, man.
Dude.
Right?
Dude.
That one still.
It's a big loss.
But there was actually a great documentary that really opened up my understanding of what he was going through and stuff. Right?
Yeah, well, he was basically going through his biggest heartbreak.
Yeah.
And he couldn't take it.
Yeah.
At least as far as I understand.
But from the outside,
it
was just like, whoa, what? Really? You know?
The best example I've got is Robin Williams.
Sure.
I mean, literally, his whole career is making people laugh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the plight of the comedian, right? Like,
I mean, yes, but
right?
you know, still, it's like, you know, not to say he's the last human being on the planet that I would expect to commit suicide, but pretty high up on the list of like, you know, the dude is literally loved by everybody. I don't know anybody who's like, I don't like Robin Williams movies. I can't find anybody. And his stand-up is right up there with Carlin and Dave Chappelle as greatest to have ever been on a stage alone. And, you know, family, wife, kid, whatever. You would think, you know, the dude biked and exercised like crazy, lived in California, great weather. Like you start adding all the things up, and then, you know, none of that matters, apparently. If you've got stuff going on in your brain, you've got stuff going on in your brain.
It's the self-love thing that we talked about. And it's, you know, I mean, I can't talk too much on all those things because I don't feel like it. But it also kind of vibes with that whole desperation thing, you know, and that's extreme desperation, no way out, right? Even the minute desperation, just to circle back on what we were talking about, that minute desperation just means you don't quite show up the way that you wanted to show up. Yeah. Extreme desperation, you know, it can be many things, right? And to bring this all back, right? The difference between fear and desperation, the opposite side of the spectrum from fear and desperation is just being available to what the opportunities are, to abundance, to, you know, and just showing up with an excited interest in what might happen, as opposed to a determination to get something, right? A determination to get some success can generate all that fear. It goes, I mean, we're just circling around on the same conversation here over and over. Yeah. But the answer to me is being present. It all comes back to being present and being excited about what's going on and the opportunities to shift, right? And when you're present and you're excited for what is happening, then when something cool shows up, you're more ready to hit the target
and appreciate that cool thing
and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of trying to go for it and then just missing it because you weren't showing up just the way you wanted to be able to show up because of, you know, and I mean, there's no switch to be flicked back and forth. Right. Yeah. I mean, there are days I wake up and I can tell that I've got that desperate drive to just make something happen. And then I need to be really cautious of who I'm talking to because I don't want to show up for people in that way.
Do you have like a morning like routine when you're feeling that way where you're like, okay, I'm off, so I need to go do these specific 3 things?
I journal. I journal a lot to just help me through the process of understanding why I'm in that space, figuring out how I can get out of that space. Does it work every time? No, sir. Absolutely not. But I understand more, right? And then I go into my day and I'm like, all right, well, I shouldn't be reaching out to these folks. I shouldn't have a conversation with my friend today about our plans. Right. Right? Because I'm not going to show up the way that I really want to. I'm going to do something dumb.
Dude, I would do the exact I would be guilty of doing exactly that, where I would have something that bothered me and then like 2 days later I would wake up and the bottle would have exploded right when I woke up and it would be like something in my relationship. So at 7 a.m, I would send a pretty like not cool text message to my girlfriend, who would, you know, see it right when she got, you know, either out of the shower or out of the gym. Yeah. And it would just destroy her entire day. Yeah. And I don't feel better sending it. I've ruined the entire day of a person.
Yeah.
And in most cases, 2 people, because the friend she's working with, when they're trying to like have a bestie work day, is now pissed because her friend is pissed.
Sure.
And they're not having a good day. And like it just, and nothing got solved either.
Yeah.
You know, I just like took my bullshit, gave it to someone else,
Yeah.
still feeling all my bullshit, ruining two other people's days, and then still have to have a mature conversation later at another point to actually work through what's going on.
Sure.
And it's just like, you know, I'm really fortunate that she was able to be like, you have a pattern of doing this and it's really messing with me and it's not the right way for you to be handling it. And I was like, shit, I've been just like killing your Monday, like 4 Mondays in a row because we've been fighting 2 days before over something that's not even really a thing. Like, this is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's horrible of me to, you know? So it's like, but it was one of those things where it was like, it got brought to my attention. I got like pretty angry at it being brought to my attention and then processed like, oh yeah, that is kind of messed up and not really benefiting anybody.
Yes.
And I thought it was benefiting because I was trying to get it out.
Yeah.
But in fact, it was the equivalent of me just like standing over somebody and yelling at somebody in text form.
Yeah.
And like, no, you know, when's the last time you got what you needed by telling somebody to calm down or to yell at them? It's never worked. Yeah. Never worked.
No.
So, you know, it was one of those moments where I was like, I used the mindfulness to like accept the anger and then realize, okay, you have the right to be angry for 5 minutes, but now let's just make the stride and move in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's really, you know, when we boil down our entire conversation, that's what we're talking about. Like, don't not be angry. That's not what we're saying. Feel the anger, but
all your emotions.
But you have to channel it correctly. You have to process it correctly. There's that.
You can feel them and not act on them.
Yeah.
Right?
There's that. There's that Canadian. He's like a therapist or whatever. He does a lot of like talks. Jordan Peterson. Do you know Jordan Peterson?
I know of him. I've heard a couple of his talks.
And he loves to correct the saying from, I may be wrong, I believe it's Gandhi, who said like it's better to be like it's better to be like a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, and it could not be Gandhi, whatever. It's some like famous, it might be Confucius for all I know. And Jordan Peterson is like, nah, that's not it. You should just be a absolute monster. It's like, you need to be an absolute warrior monster at all times and then learn to control it.
I don't agree with that.
Well, you don't have to agree with
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That's the beauty of conversation.
Yeah. For me, that resonates with me, but my brain chemistry and life circumstance is different than every other person.
Sure.
So for me, it's like, I want to be that monster, that warrior who's that person, and then have the ability to center myself, control myself, and be able to unleash that when it is needed.
Yeah.
But always have it.
I don't know. I mean, that you feel that's great, right? And you know, I think I look at it more on the Confucius / Gandhi / whoever said it side, where, you know, I'd rather invest my time in being centered, and I know I have capabilities, you know, but I don't want to be in a mindset where I feel like I am reining in anger or reining in beast mode.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, maybe the way that I'm paraphrasing it is a little incorrect, because I don't want to imply that like you should just always be like a angry, testosterone-filled, like rage bull monster.
But see, that's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah. So maybe I'm saying it like incorrectly. It's more like
it almost feels like you're saying it's better to cage a beast, and instead of like, well, I guess I don't have instead of. It sounds like you're saying, have the anger and have the beast mode, and then just cage it up and bottle it up until you need it, right? And then my concern in that type of circumstance would be, what about that day you can't control it, and all of a sudden you're just in full rage mode?
Well, see, I guess the devil's advocate that I would play is I would never want to be at a point where I can't access that beast mode. And if I have that, beast mode's an interesting term. Shout out Marshawn Lynch.
Also Transformers.
Yeah. Transformers, yes. Autobots let's roll out.
Transformers Beast Wars.
Yeah.
Because they were there pretty cool. Long before him.
They were
just saying.
They were pretty cool. I do like Marshawn Lynch, though. Have you ever seen him on Conan playing video games with some other dude? It's like, it's so funny just watching him. Like, he rolls in hysterical with like jumbo Skittles. It's very funny. But yeah, I guess for me, like, I love the thought of you always have that beast mode there, but you have learned the correct ways to, you said the term be centered. That I think is a crucial thing, like to be centered, but always have the ability to turn that on and know that it is there when when you are in that circumstance where you really need it, but you have the control to calm it down when it is not needed.
Well, I guess in that circumstance, I feel like it makes sense, right? Yeah. Because that's what a lot of martial arts are.
Yeah. Maybe, it's probably just a phrasing that I have paraphrased it incorrectly.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you think about, like, martial arts and stuff like that, anger's not involved, really.
No, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Those hype anger dudes get knocked out the quickest in a UFC match. It's that quiet dude who's meditating beforehand.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the skill set, you have the capabilities, but you're not diluting it with anger.
Yeah.
And you're not diluting it with unnecessary emotions in that time.
Yeah.
Right? It simply is. Right?
Yeah, put the anger in the gym.
Yeah.
Leave it there.
And I mean, if I'm personally not one who has any desire to pull motivation from anger in any circumstance in my life. It just doesn't vibe with me, right? I can do quite well for myself being present as opposed to being fueled by some emotion, right? Because I have less control.
Well, you've been practicing it a lot longer than, say, me, who there's a moment where I'll get really, really angry, and the best solution for me is to just go do 15 curls and be okay.
Yeah, but we're talking about it's another one of those timing things, right? Are you using the anger to lift, or are you using the lifting as an outlet for your anger? Right? Because, there are people who just tap into being super pissed off to be able to squat a massive amount of weight, and I don't see that as healthy. But if you're upset about something and you go to the gym to, get in some exercise and, release some endorphins and feel better about things, that is an extremely healthy way to process things, right?
It's such a fine line.
Oh yeah. It's where's your motivation coming from, right? And that's its own conversation.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. Motivational factors are a big thing. We didn't really touch on it, but it's definitely an important aspect of just, how you are moving through your life. What is motivating you? Yeah. Yep. Is it family?
Maybe that's the next podcast, yeah?
Yeah. Let's set it up. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a great place to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah, man. Wow, almost 2 hours.
Yeah, it flies by when you're having fun, man.
No doubt. Man,
Yeah.
This is pretty good for my first podcast.
You did perfect. Yeah. And, you know, if you're listening and, you know, any of this is resonating.
First off, thanks for listening.
Yeah, definitely. First off, thanks for listening. But if any of this is resonating, you know, we are not the people that you should be directly taking advice from. But we do have real life anecdotal stories of friends and our own personal journeys that hopefully you can hear and realize that it can be a very small step that you take every day by replacing one thing with another that can very slowly, but not so slowly, really adjust your overall mental feeling. And it can be something like, you know, replace soda with water, replace 1.5 hour TV show that you're binging with 1.5 hour walk on a flat sidewalk around your neighborhood, replace, you know, one crappy meal a week with one really healthy meal a week. And
whatever, you know,
you slowly, but
Yeah.
these small changes are so much bigger than you think, and they help you look at the unclimbable mountain as a very realistical climbable staircase.
Yeah. And find your people.
Yes.
Find the people that you're not only comfortable with talking with, but who will provide positive feedback and feedback to help you grow.
Yeah.
It can be a therapist, it can be a friend, it can be a parent, it can be, you know, just find them and don't be scared to talk to them.
And don't be scared when they don't say yes.
Yeah.
Because if you have a friend who's just a yes man, that's not actually helping you.
I
You need a friend who will say yes when it's the right to say yes, but you also need a true friend who's going to call you on your shit right to your face and be like, actually, you're kind of looking at this the wrong way.
Yeah.
I love you, but if you thought about it looking at it from this angle,
and
that's the friend, you know, it's very easy to find yes men.
yeah.
That's easy.
But it's also, I guess we're not wrapping up quite yet, but it's also very easy to find people who will just put you down in a pit.
That's also true.
And so those are the people that, I mean, yes men don't work, right? But I would be extremely cautious of the people who are trying to put you back in your place.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if they're in the same industry as you.
If they're in the same industry, if they're in a low headspace, why are you taking advice from somebody who you don't want to be like?
Yeah.
Right. And
there's a quote that I love that says, competition is really at the bottom. When you are at the top, everybody's rising together, and there's plenty for us to go around.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're trying, if you know, for me in the construction world, if I'm trying to like really put down competitors, that's not the way to be. The way to be is we all rise up together.
Yeah.
There's more than enough cake to go around. I don't need his.
Yeah.
He can have his. I can have mine. Like it's all like, how can we prosper? How can we all prosper? If you think that you need to be the sole king on the top of the mountain, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and think why you feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not, the king's lonely at the top and everyone's trying to kill him. Look at every movie. He's not having a good life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, maybe the prince has a nice life. Just gets to walk around. I'll be king.
Yeah. So find the right people, right?
Yeah, find the right people.
I think that, you know, if I can just sum up, you know, if you can find the space within yourself to start doing some work on yourself, and see if you can figure out what that self-love feels like.
Yeah.
And see what it feels like to be mindful and present, and don't be scared to look for help.
And remember that it is a long and slow and thankless process. So you have to thank yourself. Yeah. You have to acknowledge,
look where you were and look where you are.
Yeah.
And look how much you've grown.
And it can be as simple as, writing in your journal, today I didn't eat that thing I knew I wanted that was bad for me.
Yeah.
Like check plus, smiley face.
Yeah.
And that baby victory leads to 2 baby victories the next day. And it's just about continuing to grow and realize that it is, in fact, a never-ending journey.
Yeah. and be happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find the joy in it.
Find the joy in it.
Absolutely.
No. This was awesome, Tom. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it was a blast.
As always, the Orange Hammer podcast is on Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere you get your podcasts. But you know that because you're listening. And if you need CRS contracting for anything, you can call Corb at WSDG.com. Or email rather, or call 845-489-6057. And there you go.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for coming. We will do another episode.
Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.